reply for 5 minutes. Those seconding items have 5 minutes and can reserve their right to speak before the mover of the motion has the final say. All other councillors can only speak once for 5 minutes per item. This must be before I invite the seconder or mover to speak at the end. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence for this meeting from councillors Davey, Hawkins, Potter, Rajesh and Wilson, and possibly is Eleanor Sampson also, I believe. Are there any others?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Canning as well.
Thank you. Second item is my announcements. As members will be aware, we have sadly lost one former mayor since our last meeting. Bob Shepherd passed away in September, having served as a councillor for the Conservatives in the Little Baddow, Danbury and Sandon ward between November 2004 and March 2022. Bob chaired the Development Policy Committee for a number of years and was the mayor in 2011. Bob will be missed by all of us, and our thoughts continue to be with their family and friends. Please, if you are able to stand, please join me in a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd now like to invite Councillor Whitehead to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You said about his career, you didn't mention his earlier career, of course, as a policeman, and has spent a great deal of time. We had lots of policemen on this side at one stage. They've slowly faded away, really. And sadly, Bob was the same. But he was a mayor. He came out to Backnang with me and the group there. I've got some wonderful pictures of him standing there, as you will well know, in that particular room there. And he had, of course, Little Baddow tattooed across his chest, really, I think it's fair to say, and lived in a lovely house there, lovely garden, beautiful garden there, and was a very happy person, really. I think the most important thing about Bob, he was always cheerful and smiling, really. Even the council didn't get him down, so, I mean, he must be really good. But having worked in the police, probably, I guess, anything is probably, well, I mustn't say things against the police, but it's probably more interesting in the council these days. And so it is with great regret that we've lost him. But nonetheless, I think quite a few of us remember him, and you'll remember him. And for that reason, really, it's sad to see him go, but he had a fascinating career, and I can't go through all the things he did. Certainly his police career was varied, as they say, but nonetheless, he was certainly someone that we will miss greatly, so a very sad evening, but thank you for your commendation on him.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you very much. I don't have much to add to what you and Councillor Whitehead said. I'll just add from my side our own condolences. As Councillor Whitehead says, he was always, Councillor Shepherd was always very jolly in all circumstances, and always sort of a cheery wave and hello, and was always delighted to see everybody. He certainly enjoyed his time and served his ward well, I think, and the wider district as mayor. And so I send my group's best wishes to his family. Thank you.
Thank you. We've also, sadly, lost two former borough councillors, Marjorie Gill and Ian Gale, and a past mayoress, Christine Van Tromp. Our thoughts are with their family and friends. Very sad altogether this time. That's unusually more than we normally lose at the time. By the end of November, the mayoralty have attended 180 engagements and meetings, with many more scheduled this month, taking us to over 200 by the end of 2025. We have a civics carol service coming up on the Friday the 12th of December at Chelmsford Cathedral, and that's supported by Chelmsford Salvation Army Band, Chelmsford Singers and Essex Dance Theatre. I think you'll find it's going to be a really good occasion. We also have several fundraising events coming up, which you will soon know all about. A music evening at Hotbox, I hope you're ready for that. A fashion show, and a Bollywood finale event. Watch this space. Right, moving on, agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Members will be aware of the need to declare any interest they have in the business of this meeting, either now or when we come to the item. Does anyone wish to declare an interest at this point? That's good, thank you. Moving on to the minutes. The minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of September 2025 have been distributed. Are you happy to accept them as a correct record? Thank you. Just sign them. Thank you. Before the minutes are approved. Agenda item 5 is public questions. Any member of the public may ask a question on which the council has powers or duties, or which affects the city. Questions must not exceed 2 minutes, and the total period allowed for question time under the council's rules of procedure is 30 minutes. There's not an opportunity for supplementary questions. We have received 6 public questions for tonight's meeting. And can I start with inviting Mr. Saint? Is he here to ask his question tonight, Mr. Saint? No. No, in that case, can I ask Councillor Robinson to respond to his question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This was about a recent event of by the so-called Pink Ladies group in Tyndall Square, and he was questioning whether we'd given permission. So thank you for the question. No is the short answer. We didn't give permission for this activity to take place as an event because it was regarded as a political protest, not a hiring event. We did initially receive a request from the organisers for a presence in the city centre, but as it was related to a protest, it didn't meet the criteria for booking Tyndall Square as an event space, so no permission was given, and it was referred to Essex Police for them to manage. The criteria for booking public events only refers to formal bookings for cultural events. This wasn't one. I share the questioner's concerns about any racist views that are being expressed. Racism has no place in this city, and if the questioner has any concerns, I would urge him to report anything that he's witnessed or is concerned about to Essex Police. I wasn't at the event, so I don't know what was said. Approval doesn't have to be sought from the City Council for a process to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hayden, is she here? Mrs. Hayden, please come to the microphone. By the way, everyone here has seen the questions in advance, so we have 4 copies, which can help when you've only got 2 minutes to read them. Okay?
So on that basis, I've cut it down a little bit. Just before I ask the question, I'm here on behalf of the concerned residents of Runwell. We would really like to thank the Council for pursuing High Court enforcement action in relation to the illegal development of the paddocks. Thanks also to Councillor Steve Davies for his communication, and Paul Brooks and Kirsty Dougal for meeting with us. We understand that this issue is complex and involves several different agencies. Further to last week's High Court outcome, please can you explain the steps to be taken by the Council and or the courts in relation to the paddock site, along with an indicative timeline. The paddocks is a small part of a multi-plot Meadow Lane estate in Runwell. Aggressive illegal development continues on the whole estate, where landowners change regularly but work together. Residents directly impacted by this illegal activity remain devastated. Privacy has been severely compromised by the development, which largely sits above fence lines. This has worsened now the few trees that remain on the boundary have shed their leaves. Homes are at risk of landslip, pollution from sewage, land contamination, unmitigated flood risk, and residents are subject to noise, light pollution, dangerous traffic, regular fly tipping and intimidation. The local press has reported increasing antisocial behaviour and crime, so most residents cannot sell their homes and escape. Homes across Meadow Lane are still promoted for rent. The paddocks alone generates income of over £0.6 million a year for the developers, who exploit the planning system, the land, the local community and the new residents. The new Meadow Lane residents may not be afforded the contracts, rights or legal protection expected by other tenants. The Runwell community shares resources with Wickford, the local town centre, which is in Basildon's boundary. Similar illegal development at Newlands Road and acquisition of high-density developments by London boroughs has significantly increased pressure on stressed local infrastructure. So illegal developments like Meadow Lane cannot be sustained by existing local amenities and police, especially when that contributes to another council's problem. Does the council agree that enacting High Court enforcement action on the paddocks whilst granting planning permission on another Meadow Lane plot west of Innishear Farm within weeks of each other is sending a very mixed message to both developers and your constituents? And what is the council's strategy for managing the continuing aggressive development on the rest of the Meadow Lane estate? Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for coming this evening to ask your question. As Cabinet Member for Greener Chelmsford, I do work closely with the planning and planning enforcement teams. So you asked for basically a summary of next steps, an indicative timeline. I will come to all of that, so if you'd like to sit down. Thank you. So you asked, you'd like to clearly understand the next steps to be taken by the council and or the courts in relation to the paddock site. So in summary, the order includes mandatory steps of clearing the land and restoring it to its former condition. This must happen either if a valid planning application is submitted within 3 months of the date of the order, within 9 months of any refusal of planning permission from the local planning authority, or the Secretary of State should an appeal be made, or within 9 months if no valid planning application is submitted within 3 months of the date of the order. The order also includes restrictive elements to continue to protect that land from further occupiers moving on or further caravans and such like being imported. Officers anticipate that a planning application will be made. If this is made by the 27th of February 2026, that is within 3 months, those occupying the land can continue to do so until 9 months following the date that the planning application is refused or any appeal is dismissed. If an application were to be submitted at the end of February, accounting for an 8-week statutory determination period of a planning application, the earliest a decision could be made is the end of April 2026. If that application was refused and an appeal submitted, the timeline would then be dictated by the Planning Inspectorate, but Based on current timescales for public inquiry appeals, a decision would be issued around the end of 2026. The defendants would then have 9 months to comply with the mandatory steps if any appeal is dismissed, which is approximately September 2027. You go on to describe in some detail the experience of your neighbours and indeed yourself. And you ask, does the council agree that enacting High Court enforcement action on the paddocks whilst granting planning permission on another Meadow Lane plot in a Shire Farm within weeks of each other is sending a mixed message to both the developers and our constituents? The reply from a planning perspective is no. Planning applications, such as that has come forward for Inner Shire Farm, are determined on their own merits and on a case-by-case basis. The application proposed a single gypsy traveller pitch and considered in the rounds the limited adverse impacts of granting planning permission for Inner Shire Farm did not significantly outweigh the cumulative benefits. Material considerations, therefore, indicated that planning permission should be granted. The same cannot be said in the case of the paddocks, due to, as you have specified, the environmental harms that have been established. You've also asked, what is the council's strategy for managing the continuing aggressive development on the rest of the Meadow Lane estate? In response to the ongoing issues at Meadow Lane, the council agreed to provide additional resources to the planning enforcement team. This vacancy was recently advertised, however, there were no suitable candidates come forward. The council continues to consider how the additional resource can be best utilised. Planning enforcement will have more capacity now that the mandatory High Court injunction has been granted, as successfully securing that High Court injunction is very resource intensive, and officers are now looking to take action on another high priority case outside of Meadow Lane, but once this has been resolved, the full intention is to fully review plots within Meadow Lane, to identify those which are in breach of planning control, to recommend and prioritise actions for sites in breach of planning control, to take necessary action dependent on resourcing and priority, and to identify plots which, whilst they may not be in breach of planning control, may be able to be investigated from a licensing perspective. Officers will also liaise with public health and protection services to assist with the licensing investigations. And I would like to say, you obviously don't have a right to reply in this chamber tonight, but the Council's Director of Sustainable Communities, Paul Brooks, and as you mentioned before, Planning Officer Kirsty Dougal, are very happy to continue to liaise with you, engage with you, and to answer any further questions you may have. And they will also continue to share updates with you as this case moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for taking the time to come and express your concerns and ask your questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Right, moving on. Mrs. Parr, are you here? Thank you again.
Hello, it's Miss Parr, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
I've got a question. I just would like you to confirm the reasons why PM Marie Goldman has requested additional funding for policing in relation to Wethersfield residents being transported into Chelmsford on a daily basis. If there is no risk with these men being dropped off here, as suggested before, why is additional funding needed? From my understanding, there are approximately 15 buses operating on rotation between Colchester, Chelmsford, Braintree. These times are 10 a.m. and the latest pick-up just after 7 p.m. In addition, when will the council work with the Home Office to reduce these daily drop-offs and consider implementing a curfew to prevent individuals from walking the streets after dark? The government website suggests these individuals are here to volunteer, yet we have received reports of them congregating in parks, incidents of theft, proof of videoing and photographing women and children in the streets. Could you clarify what measures are being taken to address these concerns? Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you for coming to ask your question in person. Local councils have no say over or influence over the housing or the transport or the management of asylum seekers. So really this question needs to be addressed to the Home Office, and indeed could have been ruled out of order because, as I say, it has no relevance to what the council has responsibility for. If you or anyone else has any evidence, and I emphasise evidence rather than speculation or hearsay, of crime or antisocial behaviour, I urge that it be reported to the Essex Police via their website for them to take appropriate action. Chelmsford City Council has a strong record on community safety. We work closely with partners like Essex Police, the Police Commissioner, the city's Business Improvement District to make Chelmsford a safe place to be. We've been awarded Purple Flag status for the last 11 years in a row, which recognises that Chelmsford has an effective community safety partnership and is a safe and vibrant city. We've made significant investment in our CCTV system this year with new cameras in the city centre, Great Baddow and other parts of the district. On Saturday nights, we work with partners to ensure that a range of support is available in the High Street on the business evening of the week with the SOS bus, taxi marshals, night marshals all on hand, and we can coordinate nights of action with Essex Police, and the next one is planned for this Saturday. Chelmsford is the first area in Essex to develop a women's safety charter, and many areas across the county have used our model to follow suit. Work to make Chelmsford safer and more inclusive for women and girls has also been happening in schools. Officers have worked with students in Springfield, Broomfield and Southwood and Ferrers to co-design safer public spaces through the Make Space for Girls programme, and training is also being delivered to tackle misogyny. In November, sessions for 600 Chelmsford College students on knife crime, gangs, misogyny and alcohol advice took place over the course of several weeks, all of which is making Chelmsford a safe place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, is Mrs. Atson here? Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here. Domestic abuse remains insufficiently prioritised within the policing and multi-agency, and there is a shortage of support for women, especially through charities like Next Chapter. Is very limited on what they can help women with that is experiencing abuse, and there is also the impact in family courts, because how the family courts deal with it, and especially social services, there is no multi-agency that's actually working together to reduce the issue or to have early intervention, which is essential because children are suffering, women are suffering, men are suffering. And what we're seeing in Essex policing is that sometimes it's minimised, evidence is not looked at, and then you have to go to review, and it is quite frustrating and stressful for victims of abuse. And the housing issue, if someone wants to flee domestic abuse, there's no facilities or very little facilities for women and children or even males to go to. And my request today is that how are we looking at domestic abuse, because it's filling the courts up with all the allegations, and it's time we actually look at proper policies, procedures. We've been through training so many times, but it's still happening and occurring within the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have your full question here. Councillor Ely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for your question. Domestic abuse is a key priority for the Safer Chelmsford Partnership and Chelmsford City Council under its corporate safeguarding responsibilities. We ensure that staff are suitably trained to tackle domestic abuse appropriate to their job role, and that staff are aware of all forms of abuse in their mandatory safeguarding training. This is evidenced in the Section 11 audit that we complete for the ESCB and ESAB on a biannual basis. Community safety staff work alongside police professionals in the Community Safety Hub who specialise in protecting and supporting young people. Community safety partners attend a monthly task meeting in the hub, and they are encouraged to share information on all types of abuse. We encourage community and partners to undertake 3 J9 training. The link is J9 Training Initiative, Southend and Thurrock Domestic Abuse Partnership. Staff from housing services will attend case conferences for those persons at risk of abuse on a regular basis. to ensure that they are safeguarded in their homes. The City Council has also championed tackling violence against women and girls, VORG, by being the first council in Essex to launch a Women's Safety Charter in 2022, which was followed up by the Active Bystander campaign in 2024. More recently, community safety officers have provided training on misogyny in schools and colleges and commissioned a focus-based intervention in a secondary school with the PFCC Safer Streets funding. Community Safety Partnership provides a report to Overview and Scrutiny Committee on an annual basis, this is usually in February, which provides police performance figures on domestic abuse. Regular reports are also provided to the One Chelmsford Board 3 times a year, which includes more detailed performance figures. The commissioning of services is undertaken by the Essex PFCC and Essex County Council, and the performance is reported on an annual basis by SETDUB, the Southend Essex and Thurrock Domestic Abuse Board. A copy of the SETDUB annual report can be accessed in the link final-SETDUB-annual report 24-25. The lead for the outcome 3 in this report is in fact our own Chelmsford City Council Strategic Housing Services Manager, Paul Gaylor. And this is under Everyone Can Build Their Lives and Live free from domestic abuse. We'll also know that it is a key priority in the current police and crime plan under heading Tackle Violence Against Women and Girls and Domestic Abuse, Police and Crime Priorities, Essex PFCC. And the pledges are: we will put victims and survivors at the heart of all that we do, ensuring support services such as independent sexual and domestic violence advisors are tailored to meet their different needs and enable people to build resilience and live safely. Work with partners to address forms of abuse that require a tailored response, such as stalking, and work effectively together to target this offending and prevent harm. Monitor the use and effectiveness of legislation, such as protection orders to manage offenders, and increase confidence in policing by promoting a positive culture and ensuring Essex Police exhibit the highest standards of behaviour in relation to women and girls. They also state, to tackle violence against women and girls, we will invest in understanding and delivering evidence-based initiatives that women and girls say will make places be safer and feel safer for them, including our Safer Streets Fund, and undertake evidence-based educational interventions to prevent violence against women and girls and encourage healthy relationships and give boys and girls the tools to identify and manage risky situations. They also state, to break the cycle of domestic abuse, we will build on our successful Reflect and Change programmes to break the cycle of domestic abuse by working with perpetrators to change their behaviours. Work with the criminal justice system to ensure it is effective in holding all domestic abuse perpetrators to account and delivering timely outcomes for the victims. Ensure that all statutory and regulatory partners are building their part in supporting victims of domestic abuse, from housing associations through to probation and prisons, and ensure Essex Police support Clare's Law and respond promptly to requests for disclosure of previous domestic violence offending. And then finally, to tackle sexual violence, we will work across the criminal justice system to increase the number of cases of rape and sexual assault brought to court and resolved successfully beforehand. And they will use a victim-centred approach to gather evidence and build their case. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on. I understand the member of the public who submitted the 5th question is not here to ask it. Therefore, I will just check though. Mr. G. No? Okay. I'll ask Councillor Robinson to respond to his question.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. The question was about the use of our leisure centre, suggesting that he said we're providing free use for asylum seekers, which is incorrect. The premise of the question is incorrect. As I said in answer to question 3, local councils have no responsibility for the management of asylum seekers. They're looked after by the Home Office. Along with many other local authorities, The City Council did run a scheme for Afghan refugees, providing some activity when the gym was not busy, off-peak, for a maximum of 3 months, at little or no cost to the leisure centre at all. They weren't asylum seekers because the government had already given them permission to come to Britain before they arrived, because in most cases they had worked for the British government or the army. And this was later extended to include Ukrainian refugees. The scheme was subsequently taken up in 2024 by some asylum seekers who were making use of the gym facilities at those quiet times. But as the intention of the scheme was to support families, the use of the gym was removed from the list of off-peak activities available. I'm delighted to say that attendance and membership at our leisure centres has risen substantially over the last 5 years, and so our leisure centres, far from actually costing the taxpayers anything, they make a surplus, and the costs are covered by entrance and membership fees.
Thank you. We've got one final question this time, I believe. Mrs. Shah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. We are at the very start of the festive period, when Christmas events, work parties, late nights and heavy alcohol consumption mean an even greater need for safe, reliable taxis. With this in mind, can the Council explain whether its current stance towards Chelmsford's licensed taxi trade is now putting public safety at risk, particularly for young women? Lady Alish's national report highlights that women make different and more risk-adverse decisions about transport, especially at night. With that in mind, why has the Council permitted significant numbers of Uber vehicles to operate freely in Chelmsford, despite Uber's widely publicised safety concerns relating to women, and despite the damaging impact on Chelmsford's licensed, often Chelmsford resident tax-paying drivers? Why are out-of-area vehicles allowed to work across Chelmsford with little local oversight, while the Council tightens restrictions and costs on its own licensed drivers? At Beauty Park Station, how does the Council justify imposing a £500 permit for rank access, considered by drivers a poor investment or simply unaffordable, when the result has been an empty rank and stranded passengers? One passenger recently had to reboard a train back to the city centre just to find a taxi home. With Chelmsford residents clearly opposed to this permit charge, what assessment was made of the safety impact before introducing a policy that reduces taxi availability at a brand new strategically important station? Why did the licensing committee not decide to remove this permit charge, and why are they continuing to attack our taxi drivers licensed here locally with impositions around environmental concerns on their vehicles that are completely out of kilter with what's available to them to purchase? In short, does the Council accept that its policies are simultaneously weakening Chelmsford's licensed fleet, undermining public safety during the busiest and riskiest time of year, and disproportionately affecting women who rely on secure, regulated transport at night? Thank you very much for listening to my question.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson. Oh, Councillor Ely, sorry. My apologies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Shah, for your question. In response to the first part of your question, question 1, Uber has been legally permitted to operate in Chelmsford for some time, regardless of whether it is held a Chelmsford operator licence under national legislation that allows vehicles licensed elsewhere to work here. Uber is now a licensed operator in Chelmsford, having obtained its licence like any other operator. All Uber drivers working locally are therefore subject to the same licence controls, standards and enforcement as any other Chelmsford private hire driver. To date, the Council has not received complaints from residents about Uber services in Chelmsford. Any safety or safeguarding concerns would be addressed through liaison with Essex Police and the relevant licensing authority. In response to part 2 of your question, the Deregulation Act 2015 allows for cross-border hiring, and this can have advantages for customers waiting to travel outside the confines of a single local authority area. We know that there are private hire vehicles operating in Chelmsford that are licensed by other local authority areas. This is acceptable in terms of the national legislation, but Chelmsford cannot directly enforce licence conditions on these vehicles. If anyone has concerns about specific drivers or vehicles, whether licensed by Chelmsford or not, they should report them to our licensing team and, where appropriate, Essex Police for investigation. Chelmsford licensed drivers are subject to local licence conditions, fees and checks to ensure public safety, including safeguarding training and vehicle compliance. These requirements apply equally to all locally licensed drivers and are designed to protect passengers, particularly at night. In response to part 3 of your question, the Council has issued 19 permits to taxis to use the Bewley Park Station taxi rank. These are issued for £200 each for an initial 6 months, with the income being used to support the Council's costs in managing the station complex. With the arrival of a new train station, it was difficult to predict precise passenger numbers and what means of onward transport they would use. Initial demand for taxis at the station appears to be low, and this is confirmed by initial feedback received from drivers who hold a permit. However, this is very early days in the life of the train station, and usage is increasing and it is becoming more established as the weeks go by. Contact has been made with permit-holding taxi drivers to advise on the importance of their presence at the rank. We continue to remain in contact with these drivers on this matter. As demand for taxis at the station increases, it's likely that the more taxis will be waiting on their rank. The use of the station and rank is under continuous review and monitoring and is carried out by Chelmsford City Council staff. In respect to part 4 of your question, the introduction of the permit scheme went through the appropriate process and was discussed at Regulatory Committee and at Cabinet. This democratic process was an opportunity for members of the public to raise their issues. In response to part 5, I believe this refers to a comment made in the recent Regulatory Committee regarding the deadline for replacement of Euro 5 taxis. The officer was asked about this and to clarify the response given was from an operational perspective, i.e. from a back office and IT viewpoint. It would be more straightforward to allow vehicles to run their full permitted 12 years rather than amend deadlines. The decisions on matters such as Euro 5 vehicle deadlines and taxi licensing policy are made by members of the Regulatory Committee, as outlined in the Council's constitution. And those committee members made the relevant decision at this meeting. And finally, the Council does not accept that its policies undermine public safety or disproportionately affect passengers. All local licensing requirements are designed to maintain high safety and suitability standards for drivers and vehicles, particularly at night, and to protect passengers, including women and other vulnerable groups. While national cross-border arrangements mean that out-of-hour vehicles operate in Chelmsford, the Council continues to regulate and monitor all locally licensed drivers to ensure compliance with robust safety standards. The Council also works with Essex Police and relevant authorities to address any safety concerns relating to out-of-district drivers operating in the district. The Council recognises the importance of reliable and secure transport at peak times and monitors service levels to ensure that public safety is maintained, particularly during the festive period. As outlined in a previous question, the City Council has championed tackling violence against women and girls by being the first council in Essex to launch a Women's Safety Charter in 2022, and which was followed up by the Active Bystander campaign in 2024. Officers continue to work with partners on upholding public and women's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that concludes public question times for now. We move straight on. So thank you all for your questions and thank you for your patience. You're welcome to stay and listen, but from now on, it's the councillors who will be talking. Okay? Thank you. The next agenda item is Cabinet question time. At the time of the deadline of noon on Monday, 2 questions had been submitted for Cabinet members. There's a right of reply to ask a supplementary question or comment, which, if exercised, also applies to the Cabinet member. The first is from Councillor Jeeps, and I'll ask Councillor Goldman to respond to it. Councillor Jeeps.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You may recall the story in the Daily Telegraph a few weeks ago about a bridge to nowhere. To quote, a £52 million road through the Amazon jungle is being built using British taxpayers' aid that is intended to help the climate. The road goes nowhere other than a tiny village and has long been criticised by environmentalists, though it is celebrated by the oil industry. It is just one among hundreds of schemes funded by taxpayers. The City Council has just opened a bridge to Waterside Peninsula, which, as shown in the Council's capital budget produced at October's Cabinet, page 38, has cost a total of £45 million. This bridge was originally budgeted to cost £15 million. Again, as shown in the Council's capital budget, so it has cost 3 times the original estimate. Is it not a similar bridge to nowhere, as Waterside does not figure in the current consultation on the local plan, and the City Council has not published details of how this important brownfield site is to be developed? As Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I am to ask that the development of Waterside is on the agenda at its next meeting, but in advance of this, can the Cabinet member explain why the final cost is 3 times the original budget? Can the Cabinet member explain why the bridge was built using public money when the cost should have been borne by the developer of this site? Can the Cabinet member advise us when a development agreement will be signed to enable work to start at Waterside? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Jeeps. I am the Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Property, just for those that are watching. Unlike the road to nowhere in the Amazon, Bow Bridge does go somewhere, and the residents of Wharf Road and Navigation Road, I'm sure, are very pleased, you know, all those thousands of residents, that they've now got easier access to their house and to their homes. And before specific responses are set out in relation to the 3 questions asked, it is probably useful to remind members of the strategic and historic context to the redevelopment and regeneration of Chelmsford Waterside, which I'm sure Councillor Jeeps is aware of, along with many of her Conservative colleagues, because the development's been talked about for probably about nearly 30 years. The adopted Chelmsford local plan in May 2020 identifies Chelmsford Waterside for housing-led development at policy SG1A. Specifically, the requirement for a new road access over the River Chelmer is set out in that plan and identified on the proposal's map. It is not a new idea, but a long-standing strategic infrastructure and policy objective supported by this administration and the previous administration. And of course, the adopted local plan was drafted and brought by the previous administration. So put simply, the delivery of Bow Bridge is providing the necessary infrastructure first, in advance of the housing, something we as a council are forever criticised for not doing. By way of comparison, no one seems to be criticising the opening of Bewley Park Station in advance of all the new homes coming forward in the garden community. That too was only deliverable with public sector intervention. So turning to the 3 specific questions you raised. Question 1, delivering new housing on brownfield sites is complex, takes time and is expensive. On Chelmsford Waterside, before further housing can come forward, it is necessary to deliver 3 key items of infrastructure: the new access road and bridge, the relocation of the gas pressure reduction system, and land remediation, given that much of the land is a former gasworks and site that was bought by your party when you controlled the administration. To that end, the Council in 2018 applied to the Government's Housing Infrastructure Fund to support for those infrastructure costs, ultimately resulting in a grant of £13.7 million. The submission of that bid was fully supported by the previous administration. In February 2020, the budget forecast for all 3 infrastructure elements was estimated at £15.5 million. That was produced before the bridge and the relocation of the gas pressure reduction system had planning permission and a detailed design had been tendered. And again, as members will be aware, when planning permission had been secured in June 2020 for the bridge and May 2022 for the GPRS relocation, detailed designs were then prepared and works tendered. For all capital projects of this complexity and size, it is not until you have all that level of detail that you actually get an accurate budget. And of course, between February 2020 and now, we've endured a pandemic, high inflation caused by Liz Truss, a war in Ukraine, all of which have impacted on capital projected delivery costs throughout the country. So, with that background, the budget for all the infrastructure for Chelmsford Waterside was agreed at full council in July 2023 for £43.68 million. Turning now specifically to Bow Bridge, it has not cost £45 million, or 3 times the budget as claimed. That is factually incorrect. The latest position, which will be finalised after the 12 months maintenance period in July 2026, is that the total cost of the bridge and road, both now finished, is expected to be around £20.9 million, which is in fact £1.7 million under the budget approved by full council in July 2023. Turning to your second question, the construction of Bow Bridge has been funded using a combination of the government's Housing Infrastructure Fund grant, Section 106 contributions, and for this purpose, and the Community Infrastructure Levy. Both S106 and SIL, as members will be aware, are provided by developers, and housing infrastructure provided by the central government. Given the cost of delivering the required infrastructure and the Council's regeneration and affordable housing objectives for Chelmsford Waterside set out in the adopted Chelmsford Waterside Development Framework in October 2021, expecting the infrastructure costs to be delivered solely by a developer is unrealistic, impractical and undeliverable. Had that been the route that the Council chose to take, it would be likely we would still be talking about this in 30 years' time, about the waterside. Rather than getting into a position where redevelopment is now in the best position possible and an attractive to a developer to work with the Council. And I'll just briefly say on question 3, because as you quite rightly say, there's not a lot we can say at the moment. Members will recall the briefing earlier this year on Chelmsford Waterside housing delivery, which outlined advice from Lambert Smith Hampton regarding potential outcomes for the procurement exercise to secure a development partner through a development agreement structure. This process is now underway, and we are currently working with the interested parties to formalise their bids. These proposals will be presented to Cabinet in the spring, accompanied by a recommendation on the preferred bidder. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Yep.
Yes, I am aware of what we've been told about the background. I'm quoting obviously from the documents that have been produced in terms of the amounts that have been quoted in my questions to you. In terms of thousands of people using it, I don't think so, but I haven't counted the bikes going across the bridge yet. I think the point of this is there was a different way to do this, and the different way was not to spend public taxpayers' money, but to get a developer. And if we'd have done this before the collapse of everything, and I mean, Liz Truss is blamed, I think, almost anything. She probably started the pandemic, I don't know. But basically, there were choices that were to be made, and we've had things explained to us. What hasn't happened is the public see a bridge going nowhere. And it goes, yes, it goes to the other side of the river, but at the moment it was supposed to be going to a housing, and it was supposed to be going to housing for homeless people. And it hasn't, because they've not been built. They've still not been built, and we still haven't got a contract. And I think there's a great deal of frustration, certainly from this side of the chamber, about how slow that progress has been. And while you can say what ifs and buts and maybes, there was a different route, we didn't take it, and we still haven't got any houses, and we're still not providing potential houses for the homeless. Thank you.
Councillor Goldman.
Thank you. I don't think there's much more to say, Madam Mayor. I mean, we've had to put the infrastructure in first so we can actually build the houses, and it wasn't an interesting site for developers. They wouldn't build there. That would just be a very empty site for many, many more years. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question, Councillor Steele, and I'll ask Councillor Moore to respond. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Merry Christmas. Was I the only one who got the memo? So I'll put the questions in writing, so I'll summarise rather than go into great detail. But it is to do with the local plan and the shortfall over the next 5 years. And we all know economic policies of the current government are not helping, but they are giving us bigger targets, which isn't helping, and they aren't building the infrastructure by withdrawing the A12 plan as well. And we're not the only council, we the administration, not the only council, who's suffering this way, and the targets, many councils are well behind on their targets. I want to address the public perception that the council has too readily accepted the higher new targets. And it's almost, I'm a bit of a Star Trek fan, and it's almost resistance is futile and you will comply. So, and our shields are down, so we are complying without question. So, will the cabinet member advise residents about, or advise us and the residents about this kind of change of strategy from big strategic sites to smaller sites that apparently require little extra infrastructure? Is it a permanent move? And the second question is about the selection of these extra sites, because they can be delivered in the next 5 years in the short term. I understand that they're chosen both from a Sheila process and from the fact that apparently infrastructure is already in place, like schooling and so on. But what happens, we've still got the old plan and the big numbers from the old plan, and now we've got this new extra plan, which is even more numbers. So it could lead to an oversupply. If we manage to recover on the large strategic sites, like Bewley, if the A12 problem gets solved or the Junction 19 problem gets solved, will there be a backward step to say we don't need all these houses on the additional site? Because it's not popular, it's not, there's certainly the numbers. So is it a permanent change? Because actually it's meant to be a short-term change and short-term addition, and we're not actually, I mean, we've slowed down on the big strategic sites, but they will still be built. So will those sites be reduced in the future, or will the additional sites be reduced if we catch up on the large sites? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Steele, and season's greetings to you. I'd just like to offer some background and historical context to this, and obviously political context, as you've started it. The government changed the formula, indeed, for calculating local housing need via proposals published in the summer of 2024. And the government recognises that Britain has a housing crisis. Thanks to the policies of both Conservative and Labour governments over the last 30 years, Britain has not been building enough homes to meet the needs of our families and especially young people. At both a national and local level, however, Liberal Democrats have positively influenced housing policy between 2010 and 2015 by supporting National Planning Policy Framework or NPPF reforms, securing funding for the Affordable Homes Programme, backing infrastructure delivery through mechanisms like the Community Infrastructure Levy, and pressing for measures to address the housing crisis despite austerity concerns. Similarly, this Lib Dem-led council made robust representations to the planning framework changes proposed by the new Labour government in 2024, stating that without significant increases in funding for affordable housing and infrastructure delivery, the big jump in Chelmsford's housing numbers would not be deliverable and fail to address the housing crisis. These responses to government were considered by Cabinet at its meeting on the 10th of September 2024. However, the government came back and reaffirmed that changes to the standard method formula in the publication of the revised National Planning Policy Framework in December 24 would withstand. So, as such, there is a requirement for this council to address the higher housing numbers, and it is essential to do this in a managed and plan-led way and not open up opportunities for speculative development and to fill a policy void. The positive approach also opens opportunities to bid for government infrastructure funding. The Council's housing supply pipeline, contained within its adopted local plan, contains a mix of small, medium and larger strategic housing sites. The review of the local plan also has a mix of housing sites and sizes. The draft local plan retains an emphasis on larger sites because that is the best way to deliver infrastructure. For example, currently at least 4 new schools, a health centre and 2 new distributor roads are planned. However, these can take up to 20 years or longer to be built. So, in light of the higher government housing numbers and the sluggish delivery of new homes, there is a need to allocate homes that can be built within 5 years. That is key. These can only be on smaller sites, and these sites have been carefully selected, for example, in locations where there is capacity at local primary schools. You also ask about, I have confirmed that additional sites now being consulted on could be removed from the plan or reduced if, for example, the Bewley development gains pace because of the Junction 19 improvements being met by developers. I very much hope that will be the case in terms of Junction 19, but these sites remain consistent within the local plan's spatial strategy. So therefore, there are no major changes in our approach. These additional sites will unlock the housing supply that we urgently need over the next 5 years. Furthermore, safeguarding smaller sites that bring homes forward within 5 years is absolutely vital to our sustainable growth as a district. Each one is essentially a thread in the fabric of our wider communities. The additional sites are not only needed for short-term delivery. The housing capacity also adds to meeting our overall housing need across the whole plan period to 2041. The adopted local plan had close to a 20% overall housing buffer for its plan period. But when using the increased housing requirements, and even with the addition of these new proposed sites, this has been reduced to 8%. Local plans are reviewed every 5 years, and future housing allocations will always be considered in that context. However, given the significant reduction in the overall housing supply buffer, it is highly unlikely that any deliverable allocated sites would be removed from the local plan or the housing numbers within those reduced. These sites are essential to meeting Chelmsford's housing requirements and ensuring that we have sustainable growth across the district. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
To come back?
Thank you. Thank you for the clear answer. Yeah, I guess there will be some concerns registered from the actual consultation, and I'll speak about some of the small sites. I think people may well be okay to have a few houses, but we're talking like 200 in some cases, in a few cases, certainly in my constituency, and I would believe there will be feedback that that's too many, but you're gonna have to handle that feedback. So, but I do want to register my concerns, and you can comment on this if you like, about we had a plan that's failing, not because the plan fails, not because it was a bad plan, because the builders aren't building, because we can't tell builders to build. So we can only tell them we allow the plans. And then we're going to have another plan with some other houses in the plan, and they may well fail as well. So the question is, how do we stop this occurring again, that we're not sitting here in a year, 2 years' time, saying, oh dear, the smaller sites haven't gone at the pace we were hoping for, and will we then be saying, let's have some more additional sites that we can deliver in the short term? Have we actually solved the problem of what's causing the delays in what was a reasonable plan?
Thank you again, Councillor Steele. Well, it would not surprise you to learn, I'm sure, that we do engage, and there's a planning team, ongoing with the larger strategic sites, and we sit round a table with all partners present, including, I'm very pleased to say, Homes England, who are now a representative on the panel when we're looking at the garden community, for example. These are huge strategic sites, and we need to be sure absolutely that the homes that are being proposed, those building sites that are being proposed, are looked at by everyone in terms of the consultation that's is now in play in Chelmsford. It started on the 20th of November, and residents are very, very welcome to consult and share their voice until Thursday the 8th of January. Please do promote this if you haven't done already. We want to hear your voices. In terms of how much we can pressurise developers into bringing sites forward, this is delicate and complex negotiations. It will take, I suppose, engagement at a national level and working with bodies like Homes England, who can potentially kickstart the infrastructure that we so desperately need, including alternatives to the A12 widening to facilitate housing. This is a sort of multi-level approach, and an awful lot of work goes on behind the scenes. People who work in planning want to deliver homes and infrastructure and business space for people sustainably. The team in Chelmsford City Council have gone above and beyond as long as I have been in the cabinet position and been honoured to see how they work. We put our faith in them. They are professional. They constantly, robustly respond to planning consultations from government. We can only do our best by sharing best practice, and we take it from there. And I'm very happy to continue that conversation with you and take more of your input back to the team. And you indeed could do that face-to-face as well as a member of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that's the end of that. I'll move on to agenda item 7, which is 7.1 is Treasury Management Mid-Year Review 2025-26. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review. I'm not going to go into great detail. Treasury management is how our officers look after the cash that we've got, and in future how we manage the borrowings that we need too. At this time of year, there is a review of the first half of the year to check whether we've complied with our strategy. It goes through a subcommittee, cabinet and comes to council, and it checks whether everything has been done as it ought to have been. This report confirms it has, and it considers whether there should be any changes in the strategy, and there's a recommendation that there's no change in the strategy needed. So that's the report that has been commended to council from cabinet via the from the subcommittee via the cabinet. So I'll see whether there's any questions. Happy to answer those. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Do I need to move that we note the report? Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Sorry. Yes, yes, please.
I'm going to be very, very brief, Madam Mayor. I think I could smell the mince pies. My concern is the borrowings. To put it in some kind of context, 29 the end of this year, 46, 46 and 42. Those are millions of pounds. We say them very easily, but they're all millions of pounds. To put that into context, it's about 2.5 times what we take from our local taxpayers every year. And I know they're not directly connected, but it just gives you an idea of the gearing on that. The other more pertinent point, the person in this room who's been here the longest, I think is in his 26th year, it's Councillor Whitehead, 16 years over that side, 6 or 7 years over this side, and he's never experienced external borrowing during his time with this council. The last time we borrowed was 2002. We had an earlier point from Councillor Jeeps about, I missed one point out. I can see you, Councillor Davidson, already, and you're going to tell me that in 2019, the gentleman who did your job at the time, the late and much missed Councillor Galley, said that he was going to, he thought that we would have to borrow more money. I understudied him for 3 years, between 16 and 19, so I've got some indication of the way that he would have approached it. What he was really saying is that if the council continued in the present way, the direction of travel, then money would have had to be borrowed, but of course he would have changed the direction of travel. And what he would have done is gone to the asset. He would have gone to the asset register, Councillor Davison, and he would have looked at the assets that aren't producing the correct return for the monies involved. Councillor Jeeps has given you one example of that. And that site could have been sold if there's a development possibility there. Developers will walk in and they will buy the site. There's no question about that. And the other one, of course, is establishment of things like nature reserves. That site, when I was involved, slightly involved, was worth double-digit millions of pounds back 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's worth even more today. So that it wouldn't obviate the 46 million, but it would go a long way towards it. Plus, there must be other things on the asset register as well, without going into assets that are already paying their way and washing their face. So I said I'd be quick, Madam Mayor. I've made my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Having seen this report 3 times, I wasn't going to ask you any questions on it. You'll be pleased to know. It's the sort of opposite of the government's plan, as far as I can understand, really, where we actually have a surplus and we're happy about it, as opposed to a huge deficit and try to hide it in assorted ways, really, so that we mustn't be critical of that. I could say loads, but I won't, about Waterside and assets. That'll be saved for another time, like overview and scrutiny, really, because that's not on the agenda as directly as it is, really. And so Councillor Knight has made various points on that, and that shows that we have alternatives. I'm not sure we've always explored the alternatives in the way that I would have agreed, but that's for me and for you to differ on. So the actual report we have here is showing excellent work by our officers, really, and maintaining the way that we look after the money that we have. It's nice that we still have money. It'll be sad when we do borrow one way or the other, really. I know we're borrowing internally, but that's not borrowing. But nonetheless, we are in a better position than most councils. Let us hope that continues until we're abolished by this awful government. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything about this, but since we brought the subject up about strategy, my issue, and it has been for probably since 2017, when I used to stand in that gallery and comment about some of the investments in the Treasury strategy, it draws me to the diversified income funds that we're invested in. And it's well documented what I thought about the property fund, and now we're out of that, and the realised gain from that is being eroded by the remaining investments, which are now suffering unrealised losses. And it looks like it's more than half what the property fund made. Now, they're not small amounts of money, but they're a drop in the ocean compared to the real market. What's at fault here is a Treasury management strategy that's not under scrutiny, because it's unfair on the 151 officer to make all these decisions, bring them to a committee that doesn't have any experience in risk management, to then talk about it's a sound policy or a sound strategy, because it isn't. You're gambling with inexperienced members on a committee with a strategy that's now going underwater. Now, I don't know what the new world's going to look like after LGR, but these amounts are going to be considerably bigger than they are now. And that strategy, if used then, will be a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Clark's comments. Councillor Clark has been a member of the relevant subcommittee for significant parts of that period, and we have valued his expertise on that. We have listened to his points, we've discussed them, we have made recommendations through Cabinet to Council, and Council has set strategy. Council, every time we've discussed it, has been happy with the strategy that we've got. I remain happy that it's the right strategy. I'd point out that in the period of the last 4 years, the portfolio has made a profit of over £1 million, notwithstanding that we've not been entirely happy at certain times with the performance of certain funds. But overall, the portfolio has given us a gain, and the income from the portfolio has been significantly better than Councillor Clark's alternative, which would have been to invest in cash, which at times has been delivering a return of 0.1%, which, given inflation, I won't mention a certain Prime Minister again, but at one point it was 11.1%. That's the answer on the strategy point. I completely agree with Councillor Whitehead. It is the right strategy, and in relation to questions about borrowing and assets, that is about alternatives. There are alternatives, I agree with that. But those alternatives give us choices, and we on this side have made choices. We've made the choices to address the issues that are facing our residents. Councillor Knight would have us not declare a nature reserve at John Shannon Field, but to build houses on it instead. We've given a commitment to our residents that that's not our approach. Our residents don't want houses on there. He's also suggested selling off Waterside. We will be ensuring that we get affordable housing on Waterside. If we had simply sold it off in the same way as the Peninsula site was sold, we could have had housing, but we wouldn't have anything else. We've got an ambitious plan for turning that into a quarter of the city that we're proud of. So that's what's at stake here. In terms of Councillor Galley's direction of travel, let's just be clear. In 2002, this council transferred council housing to CHP, generating assets, generating cash, which over a period reduced. By the time of the February 2019 budget, Councillor Galley was forecasting that the council would go into a need for external borrowing. That has continued to be the case, and what has happened since then is it has taken far longer under our administration for us to need to borrow externally than was previously being predicted. So I think that's the answer to that. We are making choices, we're making the right choices, and I'll repeat what I've said a number of times to Councillor Knight about external borrowing. The question is not how much is it, the question is it affordable? Can we afford to pay the interest on the borrowing? And as I said in July, I said again in October, I will be coming back in January and to Council in February with the budget for next year, and it is affordable. It will continue to be affordable because that's the budget that we'll be putting forward, but let's leave that until Cabinet in January. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I thought I had. Yes, I move that Council note the report.
Excuse me, was that a vote then? Was that a vote, Madam Mayor? I didn't hear anything, sorry.
This is about the local council tax support scheme. The council tax that we set results in a certain amount of council tax being calculated for any property in the Chelmsford district. For certain people, there are reductions. For pensioners with income and capital below certain levels, that can be a 100% reduction, so they don't pay any council tax. But for working age people, there is a minimum payment of 23%. So if you're in a Band D property and your council tax would have been, or for every £100 that your council tax would have been, you can have a 77% reduction to reflect your circumstances, but there's a minimum of £23. Every year we need to consider what scheme to adopt for the following year. We tend to do it in February, but if we wanted to change the scheme, we would have to consult, and there isn't really enough time, which is why I've brought it to Council in December. So if we decided to make a change, there would be time to take that away, consult, and then implement it later. However, there's an additional complication this year, which is that as we look forward to local government reorganisation, we know that we will need to design a new scheme in about, by the end of March 2028. And we don't know which change we could make that would be advantageous. And therefore, as we've done for a number of years, I forget exactly when it was that the previous administration last changed the rules, but throughout the 6 years that we've been running this administration, we've kept this scheme the same. So I'm proposing that we keep it the same again for the coming year, and by this time next year, we will have a better idea of what local government reorganisation holds in prospect for us, and then we can think about whether there are suitable changes that we should make then, or leave it to the new unitary council to answer the conundrum it will face. So on that basis, Madam Mayor, I present this to Council and recommend that Council agree to re-adopt the current scheme without amendment for 2026-27.
Thank you. Is there anyone wanted to comment? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no comment on this. Just wanted to correct slightly Councillor Clark's earlier points, really. As an assistant corporate director of Barclays Bank at one stage, I think I had some experience on the Treasury Management Subcommittee. And so, for that point of view, I'm very happy to recommend this. Thank you.
Right. I have a seconder then, please.
I'll move this and...
Okay. The motion is to approve the recommendations in the report. Will those in favour of the recommendation please indicate by raising their hands? Anyone against? Any abstentions? In that case, the recommendation and the report are approved. Thank you. We then have item 7.3, Statement of Licensing Policy. I believe that is Councillor Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I really will be brief. The review of statement licensing policy under the Licensing Act 2003 was presented to the Licensing Committee on 4th September. It then was presented at Cabinet on the 11th of November, and I would like to recommend to Council that the statement be adopted effective from January 2026.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak? In that case, are you seconded? Thank you. Motion is to approve. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That report has been approved. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, Annual Report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for 2025, which will be introduced by Councillor Jeeps.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As in previous years, we have the report that's an annual report for full council, and we're asking you to approve the publication of this report. And the statutory provisions and the committee's work and the terms of reference are all contained within that and were obviously circulated beforehand. It details the work undertaken in 24-25, which includes updates from Cabinet members and performance reviews of individual service areas. I would like to thank officers for their support throughout the year and commend the work of members and officers as part of the task and finish groups which were established during that year. So I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, it's a matter of approving the annual report for publication. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak? Do you have a second? Oh, yes, you have. I can't see. Councillor Hyland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can you stand? Sorry.
Yep.
Can't see.
In the report, it talks about councillors' call for action requests. How many came to the overview and scrutiny committee? And also, in this report, it listed the minutes of the meetings that had previously occurred, and in the minutes of the meeting of March 2025, overview and scrutiny minutes, the leader of the council referred to the corporate peer challenge that was carried out. Within that peer review report, on the 6th of December, almost a year ago now, the feedback highlighted the need for a progress report, a progress review. And the progress review was supposed to take place within 10 months of the CPC by October 2025. And the progress review report was to be published within 12 months, tomorrow. Has it actually happened, the progress review? If yes, can I please have a link to the publication site? And if not, why not?
Councillor G.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think in terms of the peer review, there was some confusion about how we run the actual overview and scrutiny and audit here, which was different. There was recommendations about training, which have taken place. And in terms of that report, I think that is an oversight because that report has not been prepared and can be now. Certainly we have now, in the last month, undertaken training for the whole of the overview and scrutiny team and the committee that sits. I have personally attended training in London, which I only did last Monday, and which that gave us quite an insight, or gave me an insight, into different ways that these functions are actually operated. So in terms of that report, it was probably too early to do the report without having that insight and without having that training. I think that can be put on the agenda to be continued and for us to report on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Robinson.
So I can help with the second part of Councillor Hyden's question. Because of all the work that our officers, Chief Executive, etc., were doing on LGR, we asked that the LGA delay the review, and they agreed to do that. So the report has been drafted, and it will be presented when the Corporate Peer Challenge team come back to see us in January. Yeah, it is January. Yeah, in January. So we're just a couple of months behind, and they agreed to that. So you'll see the report, and it will go to the ONS committee. If the chair wants to put it on the agenda, we'll be happy to present it there.
Madam Mayor, very happy to receive that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyland, do you have another point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify that we'll see the report before LGA see it. Is that correct? We will see the progress report before they do.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's not the way it works.
Sorry. I allowed you to break the rules, both of you. My apologies. Agenda item 9, community. Oh, have I gone to the... All in favour? Any against? Abstentions? I'll try and do it all. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That has been approved. Item 9 is noting the amended terms of reference for the Community Governance Review. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you very much. Yes, just very briefly. If you've read the report, you'll see I thank Councillor Thorpe for his question as to whether we were proceeding in an appropriate manner. We took legal advice that we were indeed proceeding in an appropriate manner, but taking that advice delayed the process by a couple of weeks. And so we've just moved the timetable back a couple of weeks. And that's all that this report before you this evening does. Thank you.
Thank you in that case. Unless there's anybody else to speak, I'll propose that the recommendations are accepted. All those in favour? No one seconded. Will someone second, please? We're getting too close to Christmas. That's the problem. It has been seconded. Is there anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. It has been approved. At least I must be getting too close to Christmas. That's the trouble. Okay. I have not been informed of any urgent business. Now then, I believe there isn't anyone we no longer know in the gallery. Or no, will I say normal councillors? Normal members of the public. Okay. Everyone here, I think, can stay, please. I have one more